Of course I love playing horror-themed games in October, but I started thinking about other games that aren't considered scary, but that still have their little moments. For example, the Boo Houses in Mario World. These are spooky levels, but Super Mario World obviously isn't a horror game. So this video is going to showcase some spooky levels found in non-horror games. Now, this isn't going to be every spooky level in a horror game ever made. That's not the point. These are just some that I'm interested in discussing right now. If you can think of other spooky levels in non-horror games, feel free to discuss your favorites in the comments. But after you watch this video, of course. Remember this commercial for Paperboy on N64?
Gonna get it! Paperboy is back.
Yeah, that was kind of unsettling, wasn't it? So it's not surprising that Paperboy 64 has a level that's dedicated to pretty much anything you would expect to see when you think Halloween. This haunted hangout is called the Tesla Town because there's a mad scientist and Tesla coils all over the place, I guess. But besides that, it might as well be called Creepyville. You have plenty of gargoyles, lawn gnomes that I assume are haunted, witches, gravestones, even Quasimodo is walking around. Didn't expect to see him here. The game definitely has its problems, but I do enjoy how silly this level is and the Nickelodeon style color scheme it has going on the other levels. Imagine trying to deliver papers while girls are screaming. The Bride of Frankenstein is standing on her lawn staring you down. And there's creepy scarecrows just hanging out. I like that the scarecrow is here because in the Super Nintendo game, you can hit a scarecrow with a paper and then he runs away. I think that moment is actually a lot scarier than anything in this level. Well, maybe not scarier than the graphics. Even the headlines and the papers here fit the theme, like Tesla Town gets fresh new victim, and werewolf couple gives birth to puppies. It's just goofy, spooky fun. Surprise! A Mario game is on the list! I mean, how could I not include some Mario games? Boos and other ghostly things are a common theme in Mario games, but I can't talk about all of them. So let's talk about the scary sights in Mario Party 2 on the Nintendo 64. When you go to Horrorland, you see that it's a haunted forest and everyone is dressed up like a wizard. They look so cute! Anyway, the forest has a fun and magical vibe while still being really eerie. As you make your way around the board, you see spooky cottages, plenty of broomsticks, crows, a graveyard, and a very cute pumpkin patch. I want to go to that pumpkin patch. But my favorite thing here has to be the Invisible Ghost Band because it reminds me of the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland. Man, I wish Horrorland was real. And for another wonderfully creepy moment from the Nintendo 64 comes Gex 64. This stage is super fun and totally insane. You're in a very haunted castle that's lined with giant knight armor and creepy portraits. Who's that guy? And since it's a Gex game, you know there's gonna be a ton of sassy quotes.
Welcome to Under This Old House.
And I admit that I chuckled every time I heard the Rip Taylor reference.
Reminds me of Halloween at Rip Taylor's.
I really enjoyed running into a jumping jack-o'-lantern, and I even like the dummy that's running at you with a knife. Well, actually no. I found that terrifying. Even if you knock his head off, he will still stab and kill you. Thankfully, I didn't own this game as a kid because dummies were my #1 nightmare-inducing thing. Anyway, you also see plenty of hockey masks, tombstones, and even Frankenstein's monster is chilling here. I have to point out the giant face that comes out of the wall that is very Freddy Krueger-like. It's a nice touch. I also enjoyed the dumb stuff like the water cooler filled with blood and a destroyed toilet floating in the basement. Maybe it means the basement was flooded because of the toilet? I don't know. Maybe monsters take gigantic dumps. Recording this footage made me want to play this game more and get used to the controls.
Welcome to Under This Old House.
It's just stupid, dumb fun, and I like reptiles who spew dated pop culture references, so I'll probably be coming back to this one sometime. In DuckTales on NES, you play a Scrooge McDuck who's trying to increase his wealth, as usual, so you're trying to collect as many treasures as you can, which means going to far-off lands and sometimes scary places. In the Transylvania stage, there are plenty of haunted things on display for this list. You're in Dracula Duck's castle, where you encounter sassy ghosts who are sticking their tongues out at you, mummies that look pretty gross when you knock them out of their wrappings, and plenty of tombstones that you can whack for treasure or sometimes soft-serve ice cream. My favorite thing here has to be the duck skeletons, which are basically the dry bones of the Duckverse. They start in a pile of bones and sometimes jump up and start walking towards you, just like a dry bones would. Or perhaps the red skeletons that keep popping up no matter what in Castlevania. This manor has an illusion wall, where if you walk through it, Scrooge can find a secret health upgrade. There's a lot of teleporting mirrors here, which warp you to other parts of the level. Doing so will lead you to a cart that's reminiscent of an old spooky abandoned mine. Ooh. Anyway, at the end of the stage is the boss, Magica Dispel. She turns into a vulture while in between attacking you with lightning bolts. But all you have to do is pogo jump on her head a few times and boom. She's done for and the treasure is yours. At the end of the game, you fight Dracula Duck by bouncing off the bats and hitting him in the head. So because he's the final boss, you return to Transylvania. In Tiny Toons Buster Busts Loose on the Super Nintendo, you play as Buster Rabbit and run through a colorful collection of different stages. When trying to get out of the rain, you find yourself entering an old haunted mansion in the forest. This stage is pretty cool looking from the start, with candelabras in the foreground and plenty of friendly looking ghosts who probably hang out with Casper. There's even gargoyles in between the mansion's numerous pipe organs, and bells straight out of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I like the two-headed monster that's wearing sneakers and jeans, but he throws these red ball things at you, which appear to turn into screaming cupcakes. I have no idea what they're supposed to be, but I think they qualify as spooky. If you go up a ladder and into a secret room, you enter a room that's full of more candles and some pretty cool stained glass windows that feature the characters from the show. Why would a creepy old mansion have portraits of the cast of Tiny Toons? I don't know, but it looks nice, I guess. I really like how this game looks, but I just cannot stand the controls. Looks very nice though. Taz, Escape from Mars on Sega Genesis. This crazy Looney Tunes game stars Taz as he makes his way through very frustrating mazes to escape the planet Mars. You start off on Mars, then Mole World, Planet X, and eventually make it to a horror stage, called The Haunted Castle. Like a lot of Looney Tunes games, the graphics are fantastic. I like how Taz controls. His spin can traverse the floors and walls, it can kill enemies, and it can destroy obstacles. That all works well and it's fun to do. The first boss here reminds me of the RoboCorp's boss from Contra Alien Wars. The way you move around the walls is very similar, and the alien brain snail is creepy in its own right. And this is not the spooky part, I just needed to vent my frustrations with something really quick. In the Mole World, you have to fight a UFO at the end and it's extremely aggravating. You need to jump up and spin to take out the UFO's pilot, but the controls will have you falling off the platforms or getting hit by the energy beam. I don't like this boss fight at all. I hate it so much. But anyway, let's talk about the actual spooky part. The scary part, well, besides the endless mazes in this game, is the Haunted Castle stage. There are a lot of bouncy eyeballs and little pincher bugs everywhere. And what is a haunted castle without gargoyles? These breathe fire at you, and the fire animation is actually pretty cool looking. There are some classic Looney Tunes characters in this stage too, like Witch Hazel, who's holding a freaking axe, by the way, and Yosemite Sam. I like that it's the Yosemite Sam from the episode Nighty Night Bugs. And yes, I did have to look up the title of that episode by googling Yosemite Sam Nights. There's a super annoying part here featuring disappearing blocks, and it's a bitch to get through because you're trying to hit and avoid enemies at the same time. Imagine it's the disappearing blocks from Mega Man, but if it was the hardest thing ever. It sucks. Anyway, you then end up beneath the castle where everything is black and neon green. I'm guessing it's all poison ooze or something. You have to dodge blasts of toxic gas, or maybe it's just green flames, and avoid getting knocked into the ooze. The grand finale boss fight of this stage is Gossamer and the Mad Scientist. The goal here is to hit Gossamer on the head in just the right place so that he is knocked into the electric chair. But anyway, then when you sit in the other chair, you have a brain transplant and you are now in control of Gossamer. Using his strength, you break the Mad Scientist machine and he goes running. You then switch brains back to normal and the stage is beaten. Thank God. Like most people that grew up in the 80s or 90s in America, I associate Pizza Hut with my childhood. And when I think about my childhood Pizza Hut, I of course think about the red cups, dim lighting, and salad bar. But what I also think about is the little arcade machine area in the back of the restaurant where I played the Simpsons arcade game for the very first time. I liked, and still like, playing as Marge because whacking someone with a freaking vacuum cleaner is super satisfying. It's also fun to slam into people with your ass. I wish I could do both of these things in real life. Anyway, I'm talking about the Simpsons arcade game because it just so happens to have a stage that takes place in the Springfield Cemetery. And like most of the game, it's awesome. The actual title of the stage is Springfield Discount Cemetery. So naturally, in the beginning, you see a rundown sign for the place, along with a googly-eyed frog. I really like that frog. The atmosphere here has everything you'd want in a graveyard stage. Lots and lots of creepy trees, skulls, headstones, and plenty of dudes and ghouls to kick the hell out of. After you get through all the normal guys, you also get surprised by guys dressed as ghosts that fall out of the trees, which is pretty funny. The zombies here are great because they kind of look like some of the background characters from the old folks' home that Grandpa Simpson lives at. And one of their legs is all bone. Oh, and I gotta mention that when they pop out of the ground, they do a Thriller-inspired dance, so that's always fun. But Splatterhouse Wampaku Graffiti did it better because you even get flipped off. Anyway, at the very end of the graveyard, you jump into a giant Krusty the Clown gravestone and go underground. Love it. If you've been watching my channel long enough, I'm sure you knew this game was going to come up on this list because for whatever reason, I seem to reference it a lot. And that game is Adventures in the Magic Kingdom on NES. Yes, even the Magic Kingdom has something spooky going on, and that is the Haunted Mansion level. The level starts off outside with ghouls flying around sporting wacky faces, zombies walking swiftly towards you, and even some popping out of headstones. When you enter the mansion, you walk past a few mirrors, so you just know something will pop out at you. Rain and lightning are seen through the windows as you pass coffins with hands reaching out, and there are a lot of chandeliers. Then you're off to my favorite part, which is based on the ballroom scene from the ride. You gotta throw candles at these dancing ghosts that may seem innocent at first, but if they dance into you, you take damage. I love the organ that's here and all the floating candles. It just looks awesome. When you get to the library, things get a bit tricky because the books do not want you floating past them. So you gotta dodge a few angry books here and there, but once you've done it a few times and have it memorized, it's not so bad. Just stay ducked and keep your eye out to throw a candle at the angry books the second you're at their level. The end of this stage has a boss fight. I mean, I guess you can call it a boss fight. You fight the guy from the beginning, but this time he takes a ridiculous amount of hits. It's pretty stupid, but once I realized you just go to the edge of the screen to jump over him, I was able to beat him faster than usual. The cool part about this stage, though, are the grim grinning ghosts in the background. You know, the singing heads from the ride. I love that they have them included here, even if the boss is pretty lame and not even a character from the ride. It's still a pretty cool stage all in all, and it's mostly close to the ride itself. Things are now about to get crazy with Michael Jordan, Chaos in the Windy City on Super Nintendo. When I was first told about this game, my mind was blown because it has an insanely wacky, but awesome premise. You play as Michael Jordan and a basketball is your weapon. Not only that, but your mission is to save your teammates that were kidnapped by an evil scientist named Maximus Cranium. Who is going to do experiments on them? What the fuck? Where has this madness been all my life? Anyway, you're probably asking yourself, what could possibly be scary about a Super Nintendo basketball game? Oh, there's plenty. So the game starts out in the underground catacombs of a museum, and you need to save your friends that are in holding cells here. You can't make this stuff up. I love it. You collect items like Gatorade and boxes of Wheaties, and different sets of keys to open doors. You can also get different types of basketballs to have better abilities. The enemies here are out of control, and I wish there were more than 3 types, but the ones we get are pretty funny. My favorite is the zombie with a basketball for a head. He throws his head, which is a ball, at you for an attack. And he can just keep growing new heads, or should I say basketballs? Anyway, this totally threw me off guard the first time I saw it, and he's great. There's also giant spiders, little spiders, and big eyeballs that remind me of the ones from the Castlevania series. I never thought I would be comparing a Michael Jordan video game to something in the Castlevania series, but there's a first time for everything. I gotta say, this game is pretty original and fun, and I'd like it a hell of a lot more if the controls weren't so funky. I mostly had trouble with grabbing onto the hang glider and shooting hoops. You press X and Y to make a basket, and up and B to grab onto things above you. It just feels awkward, and unfortunately, this is most of the game. But regardless, if you want a super wacky and somewhat spooky Super Nintendo experience, then I suggest you give this game a try. Now let's venture on over to the Sega Master System and see what spooky things are happening. There were many Mickey Mouse games back in the 80s and 90s. Mickey Mousecapade, Mickey Mania, the Magical Quest games, the list is plentiful. But one of the better Mickey games was Land of Illusion. Even though most of the game has stages unrelated to horror, like a beanstalk, pyramids, and so on, it contains several stages full of spooky elements. There's a boss fight with a ghost that looks like someone hiding under a sheet, which is pretty hilarious. There's also a boss fight with what seems to be Pete's dragon if he was possessed by the devil. There are a lot of jack-o'-lanterns flying all over the place, bouncing around trying to kill you. When you hit them, they turn upside down and make a pretty funny face, and I just think they're really cute. The ghosts in this stage are super depressed for some reason. Like, look how horrified and sad they are. Maybe that's because they were walking on spikes. I guess if you are a ghost, walking on spikes wouldn't hurt, but they don't seem too happy about it anyway. There's also ghosts wearing robes that look an awful lot like the whiny ones from Ghosts and Goblins. I like them better when they're shrieking. The final level is a maze, complete with candelabras, ball and chains, gargoyles, spiders, upside down topsy-turvy walls, all the things you'd want from a haunted castle. The final boss is the Phantom, but he looks like the Horned King from the Black Cauldron. He warps around the room in a tornado, and it's pretty intimidating. I'm glad it wasn't Peg-Leg Pete or Maleficent again. It seems like they always use them for the final bosses, so it is nice to see them pay tribute to the Black Cauldron. So there you have it, 10 spooky levels from non-horror themed games. Happy Halloween! Bye!